Alright, today we're getting to work on the 2006 GX470. As you can tell, the driver's side has a little bit of a lean to it. It's sitting a little bit low, so let's show you what's going on. You can see on the top of the coilover that that's not what that's supposed to look like. So this is a pretty much like a mounting ear, and that's a mounting ear. That's all part of this single plate that this coilover shock bolts through, mounts to the vehicle. That ear is broken, so I'm gonna pull the coilover out, replace the plate. Icon was kind enough to send me a new mounting plate and hardware, and we'll put it back together. While we're at it, I'm gonna take out these factory upper control arms because we've got some other ones. These guys. As you can see, there's no brand name on it. It's a solid rubber bushing. Each of these control arms weighs out to about 9 pounds, so they're not light. Nice heavy duty, thick dust cap. That's super thick rubber. Greasable upper ball joint. This is actually the ball joint from a 2nd gen Tacoma, and you wouldn't believe at the time of posting this video, these upper control arms on eBay were $70. 70 bucks, tubular, and they're meant to be installed on lifted vehicles, so it's meant to account for caster and camber. So yeah, let's get the GX up in the air and start installing these things. Alright, got the wheels off. Now I got to pull off this nut for the upper ball joint to release the spindle from the upper control arm. Then I'm going to undo the 21mm bolt that's holding the bottom of the coilover on. These 3 bolts at the top, they look like 14mm. Then the coilover should be ready to come out. After that, I'll then remove this nut, pull these brake line brackets and ABS sensor brackets off of the upper control arm off. I can then pull this upper control arm bolt all the way through, then the upper control arm can come off. Let's do it.
Okay.
There are 19mm nuts and bolts, not 21. Good thing we're in here right now because this one's actually loose. And there's no ugga-dugga on that. Is out. That had a cotter pin in it. I already took it out. Leave the nut partially on there. That way when you tap this, the spindle captures the upper control arm.
2 hours later. Two 2,000 years later.
It's gonna take some more beating. Wow. All right, that's on there. There it is. Careful on this. There it goes. Wasn't under that much tension. Make sure to orient how the washer came off. So in this scenario, the washer came off with the cupped or the bowled side of the washer facing the actual upper control arm bolt with the nut on the outside. If you forget, it's pretty easy to actually look at the washer and tell where something has been sitting on it, like this nut. This nut's been sitting on it like that, whereas it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you tried to put it on backwards. Alright, so I've got the coilover out. As you can see, this is where the coilover failed. My guess is whoever put this coilover together and installed it into the GX added far too much preload here, and that excessive preload on the actual shock is what was making up for all of this extra added stress to this top hat. So we've got a new one, as well as some new misalignment spacers and a new bolt. Just got to run to the hardware store and get a 12-point socket for that, because I don't carry too many 12-point sockets. But before we do that, I'm just going to clean this up. That way we have a clean shock to work on when we get back. Alright, so we got the original upper control arm out. Of course, it's always fun fighting this bolt to get out of the engine bay. So what we had to do was we had to remove the battery, pull off some brackets. But yeah, upper control arm is in. Right now I'm going to pull this cap off, pull the outer tie rod. That way we can actually take the CV axle nut off and have enough swing in this spindle to get the CV axle all the way out. I've got a torn boot on that CV axle, so I'm going to replace it. It's time, it's been clicking. So step number one, pull the cotter pin off of the castle nut. I always use dikes for this. Cutters, wire cutters, dikes, either or. The reason why I use dikes for this is on this side. You can see a little bit of the cotter pin sticking out. You just grab a hold of the cotter pin and then leverage against whatever you're pulling it out of. Works like a charm. Just look at that. This looks like a 17. It is not. Is that a 19? It is. Hopefully tie rod puller fits. It does. See a lot of people use like pickle forks for this. Even I'm guilty for that. I used to do that all the time, but you'll just mess up your boots on your tie rod if you use pickle forks, and this is so much faster. There it is. She's out. Now, just need to pull this cap off. I'm going to temporarily throw the upper control arm into the spindle. That way I have some more support to take that cap off. I should have done that before I popped this. There we go. There it goes. So to get this cap off, usually use a mix of flathead screwdrivers and wedges. Actually, I'm going to start with this one. Just have to be super patient, work your way all the way around. If you're not patient, you'll damage this cap and it'll be impossible to get back on. Alright, got the dust cap off. Now I'm just going to pull the cotter pin out. It's holding the axle nut in. This isn't a tutorial, but I'm sure a lot of you guys already know how to do this. How to change out a CV axle. It's fairly simple. Cotter pin's out. Axle nut cover comes off. That should be a 32 millimeter socket. I lied, it's a 35 millimeter. Leave it partially on so you can break the seal. You can break the seal between the CV axle and the hub. Just tap it. Actually want to take it off a little bit more than that so I don't damage the threads. If you damage the threads of the CV axle, it's okay for me because I'm replacing it, but only after I get the nut all the way off, because if I damage the threads, then the nut won't be able to come off. Looks like it was going to have troubles anyways. Now I'm going to put a drain pan underneath the front diff, use a pry bar and pop the CV axle out of the diff. Drain pan underneath the diff, that way once it drains some of the diff fluid out, it'll drain into a drain pan, not onto the driveway. Getting the stub shaft out of the spindle, that way I can have actual room to pop the CV axle out of the diff. It's gonna be fun. Alright, broken the seal. CV axle's ready to come out. Alright, CV axle separate. That's okay. Just have to pull off this inner CV. When I get it out, I'll tell you what I mean by it's separated. I mean by separated is on the very top of this snub shaft, there is a circlip right here. And this circlip is all that really retains it into that front differential. So you can't just slide these in and out. You actually have to give some force behind it when you pop it past this C-clip. So we're gonna let this drain out for a little bit. While it's draining, gonna run to the auto parts store, pick up a new CV axle, and then put this all back together. Do the passenger side, be done. All right, just picked up the CV axle, and then we also got a 12.13 millimeter socket for the coilover bolt. Dang, look at them dirty hands. Been working. All right, let's get home. All right, gonna get the CV axle in, get the coilover fixed and back in, and then we'll button up this side. Get everything torqued to spec. You need this cotter pin. This is an import direct CV axle. It's from O'Reilly's. They've got a lifetime warranty on them. I always use these. Don't at me. Nothing wrong with auto parts store axles. And sometimes they even make a longer travel CV axle than factory, so nothing wrong with going with an aftermarket. Alright, so just like I was showing you, there's that clip on the CV axle. There's this clip on this new one, so you gotta pass the clip. That's what you're gonna want to use to get past the clip. Make sure that your CV axle is straight, flat, nut is on there. It's in. Take the nut off. Here we go. Get that nut started. Gotta grab the rest of the hardware for the upper ball joint, tie rod, get everything on, get it started, everything torqued down, throw cotter pins back into everything. Then we'll be done with this side. Air back. Torque this tie rod end link. Tie rod end, I should say, it's 67 foot-pounds. You gotta make sure with these castle nuts that when you torque it, there's a hole in your tie rod that lines up with the castle nuts. If the hole is not lining up, as you can see here, you always tighten past the torque value. You don't ever want to back it off to get a clip to go through that. All right. That works. That's not the right one. Gotta go grab a clip. Alright, so right here's the cotter pin set from Harbor Freight. So I just need to find a cotter pin that's about the right size for that. Let's see if this one fits. Yep, that does. So, the cotter pin, if you're unfamiliar, just got to get the cotter pin through the ball joint and through the castle nut. And then you just have to split the cotter pin, open it up, bend it around. This is essentially just a little fail-safe piece of safety. Bend the dust shield back, that way your rotor doesn't rub up against the dust shield and cause a bunch of unwanted noise. Alright, now that that's torqued, just have to torque down the upper ball joint and then throw the bolt in the lower shock, get that torqued in, torque this, wrap it all up, this side's done. Before, actually, still need to grease this upper ball joint. So, torque everything, cotter pin everything, grease the upper ball joint, put brake line brackets back on, then it's done. Alright, dropping off the GX at Firestone to get an alignment. Got a lifetime alignment on this GX, so you can get it aligned as pretty much as you want. You don't want to abuse it, but I believe it's $189 and you can get it aligned as much as you want. But yeah, we replaced that top hat, installed the new upper control arms and the CV axle on the driver's side. It's wandering a little bit on the road. I can tell that it still has a little bit of positive camber in the tires, so hopefully when they take the positive camber out, dial it in and dial in the toe, then it won't wander as much. I did, however, notice that this has a leaking rack and pinion, so next on the list is to replace the rack and pinion. At that point, you can get it aligned again. It's the beauty about a lifetime alignment. So let's drop it off, see how bad the alignment is right now. I don't think it's going to be too bad, but we'll see. Check back with you guys when it's all done. Alright, so just picked up the Lexus from Firestone. They completed the alignment. As you can see, the wheels are pretty much straight up and down. Got the before measurements here, the current measurements. And see, before, right front had 4.4 degrees of caster. That's what this paper is showing. Not sure what the difference is. And then the front left had 3.7 degrees of caster. It's now showing that the right front has 2.1 degrees of caster and the left front has 3.2 degrees of caster. So could just be, I mean, it could be lower control arm bushings. It could be, I don't know, could be the upper control arms in general. Maybe they're not exactly the same between the driver and passenger. It's kind of the gamble that you play when you're using aftermarket upper control arms, especially if you're using these ones. Remember, these are eBay $70 upper control arms. So I'm going to drive on this for a bit, then I'm going to take it to get realigned in a few weeks. I'm going to be taking it off-road here probably this weekend. I'll give you guys an update of how it does off-road. Should feel a whole lot better, should allow for a lot more down travel off-road, but we'll never know. Never know until we get out there and do it. So anyways, until next time.